Okay.
Okay, so 7th grade today, we're working lessons 17 and 18. Lesson 17 is a quick hitting lesson, so it's not worth a whole day just on lesson 17. Lesson 18 is where there's more meat to this. If you're looking at this thinking, boy, his handwriting got neater during this quarantine. Mrs. Pryor, I think, got annoyed by my board being all messy, and I had a lesson up there already with my messy handwriting, and she cleared it off and put it back up in her neat handwriting and cleared my board. So if you don't recognize the handwriting, that's why. Division notation is the first bit of a lesson today. If I said to you we're going to do 48 divided by 3, there's 3 ways that you could write the problem 48 divided by 3 using math symbols. So why don't you for a second think about if you can write that problem 3 different ways. Try to do that. Pause the video, come back when you spent, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, however many seconds thinking about that, and when you come back I'll be talking about the answer to that. So if you're going to do 48 divided by 3, there's 3 ways you could write that problem. We can use this symbol to show that 48 is dividing by 3. We can show division problems this way to show that 48 is divided by 3. And as you get older, the most common way you're going to see division is by folks using a fraction bar to show 48 is divided by 3. It's 3 different ways to write the same problem. You're going to still see this as 7th graders. You're going to see some of this as 7th graders. But these are going to kind of go away over time. And as you get into the algebra world, you're going to see this a lot more as your way that division is written. No matter what, in all of these problems, the 3 is called the divisor. In all of these problems, the 48 is the dividend. And you're going to produce a quotient. We've had those words before. But this means 3 is dividing into 48, 3 is dividing into 48, 3 is dividing into 48. You know, you've got 48 cookies, and you're going to share it with 3 groups of people. That's the kind of thing that we're doing. One thing that they're going to do in some of these problems is give you things that look like this. Anytime they're going to do the fraction bar to show division, it's important to know there's invisibly parentheses there, even when they don't write them. If we have a lot of things happening on the top, or if there were a lot of things happening on the bottom, which there isn't right now, invisibly the whole top is wrapped up in parentheses. And if there were items on the bottom would do that same style of thing. So you have to do a top, and you have to complete a bottom before you could do the division, and the fraction bar again means to divide. So here we're going 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10. If we do 10 divided by 5, we're going to come up with an answer of 2. There will be a small group of letters in the homework that will ask you to just sort of get used to this. The fact that the fraction bar means to divide. I think in this homework they don't even ask you to do the division. I think they just ask you to create the problem. They'll give you something like this, and they want this for an answer. Or they'll give you something like this and want that for an answer. Or they might tell you, divisor 3, dividend 48. They just want your answer to look like this. I don't think they even care if you actually divide it. So that's the first little tidbit, but that's not worth the lesson all of its own. The main part of the lesson today is about averaging. So computing an average is something I'm sure you've done before. I would ask you again, see if you can remember how to do that. Take 10, 20, 30 seconds, whatever. Pause the video and see if you can try to remember what averaging was about. And then when you get back, I'll tell you how to do it. So averaging, to do an average, what you're first going to do is come up with a sum. Okay, sum means you want to add up all those numbers. We've had that word before. Then we're going to divide by, and I'll use our new symbol for the fraction bar to show you the divide by. We're going to divide by a count of how many numbers there are. You just count them up. How many are there? So something like this, the average of 8 and 4, we would want to do 8 plus 4 is 12. Take the 12, divide by the fact that there's 2 numbers there. 12 divided by 2 is going to get you an average of 6. Averages should always be like medium-sized numbers compared to the list. Okay, so our biggest number was 8. The average has to be smaller than the biggest number. The littlest number is 4. The average has to be bigger than the littlest number. It's got to be in the middle somewhere, a nice medium-sized number for the list that we're looking at. So here we've got an average of 6. You might remember a couple days ago we bumped into the average when we were looking at the number line and we were trying to find the halfway between numbers. Sometimes we were doing those by like counting in a space at a time, but we figured out that day we could just do the average there as well, add up, divide by 2. What I would suggest now is, why don't you on a scrap of paper jot down these 6 remaining problems, what the lists are. Once you do that, pause the video, try to do the averages. It's like a self-check there at home. Add up all the numbers, divide by a count of how many there are, see if you're getting the right answers. I'll talk about what the right answers are once you come back. If you're getting the first 1 or 2 wrong, or if you get stuck on the first 1 or 2, then maybe you want to listen to 1 or 2 of the explanations, re-pause the video, and then re-go at it. You're going to get more out of these videos if you're doing more activity of doing math and not so much just watching me do math. You want to get involved. Pause the videos, try the problems, see if you can do them just like we would if we were in class. So go ahead and hit pause, and then at some point you'll be back. So for this one, we would add up all the numbers. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 8 is 12. The 12, again, would divide by 3. This time there's 3 numbers, and we turn out 4 for an answer if we do 12 divided by 3. Again, it's a medium-sized number. The 8 was the biggest, we want to be under that. The 1 was the littlest, we want to be over that. It would fit sort of as a medium-sized number for that list. As we do these next 5, there's going to be some patterns to some of these that we're going to be able to work a shortcut. And I'm actually going to make a change here. This wasn't intended to be a 1. That should have been a comma. So if you already did that one, sorry, my apologies. But we go 1, 3, 4, 5, 10, 19. That's going to change your list, change your answer for that last one. For this, we'd want to add up all those numbers. If you add that right, you'll get 150. And then we would divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. That should give us 30. For this one, we can add, and we get 100 divided by a count, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. That would give me a 25. For this, if we add, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's 7 numbers there. And if we go ahead, add it all up, we're going to get a 98. If you didn't get 98, just recheck your adds. Add, that should get you a 98. Divide by 7, 7 into 98, if you divide it, should get you 14. This one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers to count. If we add, we're going to get 72 on that. If we divide 72 by 6, that's going to come out as a 12 that time. Last one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you hadn't made that correction, maybe pause the video and make a correction now to eliminate that 113 and go 1 and 3 and stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there. It's a 42 if we add it all up, and we're going to get a 7. Again, emphasis, it should be always a medium-sized sort of number. The list went from 1 to 19, so we need an answer somewhere between 1 and 19. It's a little bit heavily tilted towards some littler numbers. There's more of the 1, 3, 4, 5 kind of little numbers than the bigger 19 numbers, so the average should always slant toward like where more of the numbers have been. I have a shortcut to do this one, this one, this one, and this one. It's not a shortcut that works every time. It's a shortcut that only works in certain circumstances. Pause the video, maybe look at these lists for a second and see, can you think of a reason why those 4 are going to have a shortcut that the other ones didn't have. And when you think you're satisfied and you either figured it out or gave up on trying to figure it out, you can unpause and come back. These four, you can do a shortcut on them because the numbers form a sequence. There's a pattern to how the numbers are going. This, I kept going up 10, up 10, up 10, up 10. This one, I did the similar thing, up 10, up 10, up 10. There's a sequence there. I went up threes, 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 threes every time I went up threes. It formed a sequence. This one up by 4 every time, so it formed a sequence. If the numbers form a sequence, you can shortcut the process and get the answer very quickly. That doesn't work on this, because I went up 2 and 1 and 1 and 5 and 9. There's no pattern there. Here, there's no pattern to this. It's different by 2 and different by 5. There's no consistent pattern. But on the ones where there's a consistent adding sequence, a consistent adding pattern, the average is going to be found right in the middle of the list. So with 10 and 20 and 30 and 40 and 50, you could cross out the 2 big ones and the small ones. Cross out the 2 that are inner of those, and then just look right to the middle of the list. 30's in the middle of the list. That is the average. Likewise here, drop the biggest and smallest. Now drop the next biggest and next smallest. Then drop the third biggest and third smallest. And we're looking at the middle is 14. Sometimes you don't have exactly a middle, so the shortcut isn't as great then, but it's still pretty good. On this list, we don't actually have a number in the middle. If we drop the biggest and smallest, there's not a number that sits in the middle. So what we can do is just figure out what number would sit in the middle of those two. Halfway between 20 and 30 is 25. If that doesn't come to you quickly, the math process would be add those up and divide by 2, the middle ones, just like we did for this. You could average just the middle 2 to get that number. Likewise here, drop the biggest and smallest, then the runners up, and then there's not going to be a true middle. So you have to stop before you cross all the numbers out and try to figure out who would be right in between 10 and 14. Right in between 10 and 14, if you want to use a number line, feel free, but 12 sits right in the middle of 10 and 14. You could add those up to 24, divide by 2, and get a 12. If anything I just said in the last like 4 or 5 minutes was confusing, since I drew the arrows and was talking about shortcuts, then don't do the shortcuts. You don't need to do the shortcuts. Okay, if you understood it, it'll save you some time, but if you didn't understand that, don't do it. Okay, what will always work is if you figure out the sum by adding up all the numbers, divide by a count of counting how many numbers there are, divide those results. That will work always for anything, no matter what you're doing. Another weird question I could do is ask you to do like the average of 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, and do a whole bunch of 11s on the board. If I do something like that, you pause the video, think about it for a second, come back, eventually maybe you came up with the idea, it's just going to be an 11. So if I said to you, every day you're going to go get scores out of 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, what's your average score on any given day? Well, it's an 11. There's no variation to that. So if they do a repeat number over and over and over and over and over, the average is just that number. Homework, we're going to go to 2 spots. Okay, on 39, we're going to go from A to H. The 39, A to H, is going to be based on the division notation that we came in on. Again, I'll double check this. I don't think the book even asks you to divide anything. I think they just want you to write a division problem. 50-50, I'm half right. On the letters, the first 4, they do want you to divide. They'll give you something with the fraction bar, they just want you to divide it. Then the next 4, they don't want you to try to divide it, they just want you to write a problem that has the division bar involved. So, they'll give you it to you written one way, you just rewrite the problem another way. The main thing we're going to do is to the back, there's a set E. So yesterday we were doing set D all the way to the back. Set D was back, I think, on 359 or so. 350, yeah, 359. Set E starts on 359, but then it's going to spill into page 360. This set, sometimes people get a little bit mad and stop halfway through, but they don't need to. If you look at set E, you'll see the directions from the first 15 are find the average. That's what we did. Add them up, divide by, and count how many numbers there are. Then I've had some students in the past who get to 16 and stop and say, I didn't know how to do the halfway between problems. It had new instructions. What's halfway between about? Halfway between is the average. Just do the average for all of this set, the whole 25. For a question like this, I could have, instead of saying find the average of 8 and 4, I could say what's halfway between 8 and 4. You still just do the average. So when you get to 16, you're still continuing to just add the numbers together, but you'll always divide by 2. There's 2 numbers in every list, so those are even a little bit easier. The 1 through 15s, you'll divide by 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s and whatever the list happens to have once you count it up. 16 to 25, halfway between means average. Average means halfway between. There's no difference. So when you get to 16 to 25, just add them, divide by 2, you should be good. If that's confusing at all, if you run into trouble with the homework assignment, just have parents or you send me an email message. We can set up a Zoom meeting in our class time someday if you need some interactive help with things you run into. Otherwise, if you're good, we'll just keep watching videos.